Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. The solar storm impact that we have been waiting for has arrived, and we are right now in the midst of a geomagnetic storm, meaning there is increased energetic volatility across the entire planet. So think strong flows of electrical energy, big oscillations in Earth's magnetic field, going all the way from outer space down into the Earth itself. And this influences geologic processes like volcanic activity, earthquake activity, what's happening with the weather. And so we have this happening right now. And as you can see, we have a whole line of sunspots on the sun. And this is the progenitor of the big solar activity that we've had just over the past few days, sunspot group 4455, but it's not alone. It has a whole train of sunspots following behind. And in fact, there are quite a lot of sunspots on the far side of the sun. In fact, just today, we saw a huge full halo coronal mass ejection exactly from the far side of the sun opposite the Earth. And so we are right now in the midst of quite a lot of solar activity if you look at the sun comprehensively, even though we are now at the beginning of the descending phase of solar cycle 25, which in some aspects has been just as strong as some of the prior solar cycles, which were quite powerful. For example, solar cycle 22, solar cycle 23, in terms of the high frequency oscillations on the sun, solar cycle 25 has been equivalent, though if you look at sunspot numbers, it's been about 25% weaker than solar cycle 22, showing that there is a concentration of activity in the outermost layer of the sun, speaking to some longer term changes that are unfolding right now with the giant star in our sky that keeps everything going. And so there's a lot happening. We have more solar activity coming in. Tomorrow is the 6-6 portal, and then on the 9th of June, we have a Venus-Jupiter conjunction, which is a big planetary alignment. And so we also have that coming up. But in general, for the next 2 weeks, there is going to be more sunspots on the Earth-facing side of the sun, each one a magnetic vortex, in general releasing more extreme ultraviolet and X-ray light radiation, charging up Earth's global electric circuit. And there's already a ton of activity happening with the Earth geologically. We've been seeing volcanic eruptions that are quite notable from Luotobi Lucky in Indonesia, also from Shiveluch volcano, Kamchatka, Russia. We're seeing still the largest eruption of 2026, Titan Ridge in the central Bismarck Sea, Papua New Guinea, that is still pumping out. And of course, we have Kilauea just having set a record 48 Fountain episodes just a few days ago. Ton is happening. And as the sun continues to defy the descending phase trend, which it is in right now, with this burst of sunspot activity and more, we're likely to see renewed and increased geologic activity as the Earth takes in this energy and then responds in kind. So all that and much more in today's video. So let's begin by looking at this full halo coronal mass ejection that was launched from the far side of the sun today. First thing to note is that this is not Earth directed. If this was, we would have a pretty big solar storm coming in. You see a huge amount of density to the plasma that was launched off here slightly to the south, and this is to the west solar coordinate system. But in general, you see this perfect full halo signature indicating that would have been sent straight to the Earth, but in fact, it was sent exactly opposite the Earth. And this was today, the 5th of June. So this means that this sunspot group that did this, in 2 weeks, it'll be facing us exactly. Now in 2 weeks, we don't know if it's going to be super active or not, but we are at least seeing some potential for big activity from the far side soon to rotate into view at this moment in time. Now, if we zoom to what's happening right now, we see our real-time solar wind and we see this solar storm impact. And it's been weird, to say the least. It's been a bit more muted than expected, but we have had some periods of pretty intense activity. So we see that we had this coronal mass ejection come in here with this strong spike in the magnetic field, going from 7 nanotesla, normal strength is 5 nanotesla by the way, going from 7 up to about 17 or so, even 19 nanotesla right there. So that's about 4 times stronger than normal. But you see this red line there, this represents the polarity of the solar wind, so positive or negative. When it's strongly positive, like we see right here, this doesn't really connect to Earth's magnetic field that well. You need a negative polarity for the solar wind to connect to Earth's positive polarity magnetic field. And so we didn't see that much activity. You see that we only got to a slight enhancement in our magnetic flux. We did see the velocity go up. Density was quite high. And then we did start to get these southward component zones here. So we did get some connection, and that's what drove this activity going to G1 and then G2 levels. So that's a moderate geomagnetic storm. And NOAA has issued a forecast for the next 6 hours or so saying that there is a potential for this to spike up to G3 levels. So we'll see if that's the case, but we do see our velocity just recently spiked to 720 kilometers per second. Now it's back to 627, but you can see there's a lot of variability in here. And during this whole time, the density has finally dropped. So we are now in a high velocity, low density solar wind structure as this solar storm continues to go by. And we see that our strength for the magnetic field of the solar wind is basically back to normal at 7 nanotesla. Now it could rebound up as a new impact comes in, but this could be all she wrote. I think we probably have a little bit more coming in here, but this has been a muted impact. I was thinking G4 storming as a result of what we had coming in. That appears to have been wrong. You know, space weather forecasting is difficult, so I apologize for that. But we have had so far a G2 impact. And if we do get some second big storm, kind of a surprise to come in, we could see this jump up pretty quickly. And we could see this go to G3 levels because we're now preconditioned for there to be stronger geomagnetic storm. But we're really going to need quite a big impact, the magnetic field to go up, and also for it to be of a negative polarity, and for the solar wind velocity to remain high. In general, we are still going through more swings in Earth's magnetic field and more energy volatility than normal, and this influences the Earth in the days and weeks ahead. Here we see our HB30 index. You see that the highest that we spiked to is a 6.67 there for 1 hour. So that's a G3 minus storm. But in general, we've been at these effectively G1 to G2 levels for the duration of this. And we can see some of the recent swings in Earth's magnetic field by looking at our geospace model here. And so this only shows us the past 3 hours. But if you were to look at this for the past 12, 15 hours like I have, we've been having these big bursts of magnetic activity, and then it's cooled off and quieted down and for about a couple hours, but then we've been having these big bursts. So here's this like quiet period, and then you'll see it renew and get stronger in just a little bit. And this is not necessarily atypical, but often a strong storm impact will come in and this thing will be dark red for hours and hours and hours. And right now we're kind of getting like gust of wind, you could say. So the solar wind sometimes is really connecting to us, like right there, that big pulse, other times less so. And if we look at our low energy protons and electrons, which gives us a sense of where we are in this solar storm impact and the arrival of a solar storm, we see that they greatly increase in flux here. This is our low energy protons. It's electrons up top, and these are order of magnitude jumps. So this is quite significant, but they're lower energy. We see that right when the storm came in is when that they were at their highest levels. They have not gone back down to effectively baseline. We can see that with our 7-day view here. So it is still elevated, but things have dropped down quite a bit lower versus the absolute peak thus far in this enhancement of low energy electrons and protons, indicating that we're probably through the main part of this, but it's certainly possible that we get a spike up to G3 levels if a new structure comes in. Here we see our sunspots on the Earth-facing side of the sun, 4, 4, 5, 5 there, soon to rotate out of view. Big sunspot group here just below it, and then quite a bit of activity stretched out. None of the sunspots looking particularly large, but in general, sunspot activity is elevated right now at around 130 or so for our daily count. And well, the monthly averages that we've been getting recently have been 100 or less. So we are in a period of time where sunspot numbers overall are higher as compared to the average for the past couple months. If we look at our far side sunspots, we see that we have quite a lot of sunspots on the far side. So this is our 180-degree line, exactly opposite the Earth. This is probably the sunspot that generated that big far side coronal mass ejection because it's right 180, it's fairly large, it's on the equator. So pretty good conditions for getting that big boom shakalaka from the far side. Again, not Earth directed. But we see a big core there, soon to rotate in view. 270 means it's the limb for us, the western side of the sun. And so over the next 7 to 10 days or so, all these will rotate in. Of course, the others will rotate out. Maybe we get some new sunspots to emerge as well. But it looks like the next week or two, we are going to be having higher sunspot flux. Now, there are 3 different volcanoes that have been quite active over the past few days that are worthy of note, especially now they have more of this solar energy and plasma energizing the Earth going forward, at least till about mid-June, and as we have this planetary alignment between Venus and Jupiter active on the 9th. Here we see Lutobi Lucky Lucky in Indonesia blasting off an ash column to 4,000 plus meters. And the moment you start to get to 4,000, 5,000 meters, about 15,000 feet up, you know it's a serious eruption and explosion. So we've been seeing this from Lutobi Lucky Lucky over the past few days. In general, this is an active volcano in Indonesia, but this is notable activity, especially when you pair it with some other notable activity in Russia. This is the Kamchatka Peninsula. Shiveluch volcano has been blasting off ash and having these big eruptions since the megaquake back in July of 2025. This ash column going up 8,000 meters above sea level, and we've just been seeing Shiveluch get more and more active. So in general, it's not one specific zone on the planet that's seeing tons of activity. It's distributed all over. I mean, we also have like Campi Flegrei. We've been having big eruptions from Fuego volcano in Guatemala. It's all over the place. One area really to watch is what's happening near Papua New Guinea with the Central Bismarck Sea underwater volcano. Here we see some imagery of this from the 4th of June. I've been reporting on this. This could turn into a huge eruption should it really go kaboom. Thankfully, that has not happened yet, but we see all the discolored water here as a result of this undersea eruption. We see the steam coming out. There, our scale bar for this is just 2 kilometers. So this is about 1.5 kilometers across. All this discoloration there, the pinkish and kind of grayish looking material, that's all pumice that's coming up. It's being formed. And then the turquoise water is from ash at depth. But we can also zoom out even more. Here, our scale bar is 20 kilometers across the full thing. You see that this is a very large structure now. So ash is being rafted up all across the Central Bismarck Sea. This eruption has not come to a close. It's been weeks now, and this is probably the biggest volcanic eruption yet in 2026. It is ongoing, and it has the potential to escalate even further. Now, something else to keep in mind, if you were unaware of this, is that we did just in the past 48 hours see a pre-earthquake anomaly in the Schumann resonances as observed out of Tomsk, Russia by the Space Observing System, specifically in the vertical electric field. So they string out this antenna and they're able to measure oscillations in Earth's electric field going from the ground surface up to the ionosphere, which measures that flow of current in the global electric circuit. And often when we see these increases in power in around 20 to 30 hertz, it turns out to be a pre-earthquake signal. So this is about 15 minutes where the 24 hertz signal, that's right at 24 hertz, which is right in that pre-earthquake range. That 24 hertz signal for about 15 minutes was stronger than normal. And that is a significant anomaly. Take some time to really research into Schumann resonances and study these spectrograms to understand what is an anomaly, what's noise, etc. But to my eye, that is a good pre-earthquake signal. It's 15 minutes. It's not 6 hours long in duration. Some of these can be, but it is still quite significant. So this could be indicating that there is heightened earthquake activity ahead of us. We can see these signals not only hours and days, but weeks and even months in advance, but probably for something like this, weeks in advance at a maximum. But there's no guarantee that this is a signal for an earthquake. It's just simply an anomaly at 24 Hertz picked up in Tomsk, Russia, and not picked up everywhere. But Tomsk, Russia is a good location for observing these because of its proximity up in the northern hemisphere, close to the magnetic pole in the northern hemisphere, way up in the Arctic Circle. And there just in general seems to not be that much anthropogenic noise or pollution there, whereas if you start to get close to the mid-latitude regions, you get these power grids and all this noise and everything. So we did see that. And if we look at our earthquake activity, I do want to show you this interesting trend that we've been seeing for the west coast of the United States recently. So I touched on this a little bit, but there's a little bit more now to update you on. We had this magnitude 5.7 there in Oregon. This is in the Juan de Fuca plate, and it's right within the oceanic crust itself. So it's not on the spreading center or transform fault, it's right in the plate. And what we see in Japan, Cascadia, and other subduction zones, but really Japan and Cascadia, is that when you have these earthquakes that are big and they're also close to big subduction trenches, they're able to desynchronize earthquake tremor. And effectively, earthquake tremor is low amplitude seismic activity that this is kind of continuous that synchronizes across all the different blocks of a subduction zone. And the more synchronized a subduction zone is, the more likely it is to all rupture in one go. Now, the last time we had a big earthquake on Cascadia was an estimated magnitude 9, year 1700. And what they show is that these smaller earthquakes, and for this study I'm referencing in particular, I'll link in the video description, they're talking about magnitude 2.2 and greater. Well, magnitude 5.7 is pretty big, and it's only like not even 50 kilometers. I think it's like 50, 60 kilometers away from the subduction zone here. That is quite significant. That means that its influence can range out hundreds of kilometers, at least according to this research. But there is this ability for these earthquakes to start to desynchronize the different oscillating blocks within a subduction zone, and that can influence slip and rupture. And that's really been shown for Japan, where the anti-correlation between these earthquakes and volcanic tremor is strongly identified. But in addition to that 5.7, we had this 5.1 here at the triple junction, along with some aftershocks. We see 3 magnitude 4 plus aftershocks. And then if you go down, we also saw this magnitude 4.1 there on the Garlock fault, and then a 3.8 there, Las Vegas. Now that originally came in as 4.1. They downgraded to 3.8. I don't know why it was downgraded, but the Garlock fault, they typically show kind of ending right here. But it is interesting to consider how perhaps there is this unidentified eastern segment, and these are two earthquakes on the same fault. And we haven't seen a big rupture on the Garlock fault in hundreds of years, just like Cascadia. Potential is for up to magnitude 7.5. I mean, I leave room for surprise, but in general, we could get a magnitude 7.5 on the Garlock fault effectively at any time. But we see this very clear progression here. This 5.7 being notable because it's not on the mid-ocean ridge or the transform boundary between them. This all is coming after we had this huge earthquake swarm near Silver Springs, and then also activity in Topana and also down near Area 51. So basically, Nevada has been activated and what I would say is unlocked. And this period of unlocking doesn't last forever. But because of all the recent seismicity that has been quite significant, if there is to be some sort of rupture or slip event to occur, well, you may need to have this area able to accommodate that stress and strain and not be the critical factor that's keeping everything stuck together. So Nevada, in general, over the past 2 months, is now effectively a little bit looser, more open, because all these earthquakes are generating new fractures in these fault zones. And that's just weakening the strength of these faults. And now we see this clear progression going like this with the Garlock fault and also with stress up here in Cascadia effectively. So California, the main San Andreas fault is the place that really hasn't seen a big rupture in a long time, either the northern kink or the southern kink in the San Andreas. Recently on the geologic timescale, decades, we've been seeing most of the activity in the East California seismic zone. This is like Mojave Desert. But what we see is that there's this oscillation between them where it'll go from eastern California and this zone to then ping over to the San Andreas zone, and then it'll ping back and forth. And this is like a decadal time scale, so like 30, 40, 50 years. So we've had tons of activity out here in the 90s, 2000s. Well, now perhaps we are inevitably getting closer to more activity off to the west. And this does not indicate that it's about to happen now or tomorrow, but it's certainly showing the changing dynamics and new stress and strain landscape that exists for the western United States. And specifically seeing it here in the Juan de Fuca Plate and also at the Garlock Fault really caught my attention. Now let's discuss this Venus-Jupiter conjunction we have coming up on the 8th and 9th of June. So just a few days away and just shortly after the 6-6 numerological portal. So here we have stellarium, allowing us to see what's happening in the sky. This line there is the ecliptic plane that all the planets move along. And I will turn off the atmosphere so we can better see what's happening. But keep in mind that this view right here is effectively for sunset. So atmosphere off, and all of a sudden we see the constellations emerge very nicely. Here's Venus, there is Jupiter. You see that they're right next to Pollux and Castor in the constellation of Gemini, and Mercury is there as well. Mercury being an evening star right now, it is visible. You have to catch it shortly after sunset, but you will see Mercury. Venus is very, very bright. It's the brightest object in the sky outside the moon and the sun. Jupiter also being very bright, and you see that they're very close together right now. So if you go forward a few days here, we see this beautiful conjunction between Venus and Jupiter right at the end of Gemini, and then we'll start to get Venus to move ahead. She's moving very quickly. We don't get an exact Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. You may think that we would. We do get the moon to sweep through here in the middle of June, but you'll notice that Mercury will actually start to station direct and then go retrograde. But at this point, Venus is well ahead, moving through the constellation of Cancer into Leo, and Jupiter is also now disengaging from the constellation of Gemini, which has been in for about a year, and moving into the Crab. So this is all happening in June, and then things really develop quickly in July. On the 4th of July, we have a Mars-Uranus conjunction. And let's go back to our Venus-Jupiter conjunction here, okay? So we see that this already is a pretty powerful signature. We only get a Venus-Jupiter conjunction once every year. These are the two benefics seen as the good guys. And so this is a good energy to capitalize on. It's an opportunity for everybody in general, and it being in the constellation of Gemini, speaking a little bit more towards social and also intellectual interactions. And so around this time, starting now, but really the 8th and the 9th and the 10th, it's a good time frame to maybe go out of your way a little bit to learn something new, meet new people, go to an event that you normally wouldn't otherwise. It's kind of a lucky combination. So that's good to know. And then if we look at our true sky map here, also constellation based. So this is not Western tropical astrology. This is the actual constellations, including Ophiuchus here. We see the wheel for today, and unfortunately the labels are kind of screwed up. Maybe if I go forward a day, that will fix it. Let's see. Not really. But basically, you'll notice that we have this basket in play, okay? So we have this basket with Jupiter, with all the other planets. There we can kind of see it a little bit more clearly, okay? Venus effectively, this is Jupiter up there. Venus effectively right now is conjunct Jupiter and will be participating in this basket configuration that all the outer planets are positioned in. So you have Pluto, you have Saturn, Neptune, you have Uranus and Mars, and then you have Jupiter. And Mars will really click into that basket on the 4th of July. So this preset configuration between all the outer planets that is active this summer is then going to be activated by all the different inner planets throughout this time period. This is a very rare configuration. Like you don't see this every 10 years, every 100 years, every 1,000 years. This is very, very rare. So we really don't know how this is going to manifest energetically, but I do think it speaks to some stronger solar activity this summer in general, because we see this connection between planetary geometry, especially if it's all geometrically and harmonically connected together, and stronger activity on the sun. So keep that in mind. But the activations of the inner planets conjuncting, and then of course forming all these harmonic aspects to the outer planets throughout the summer is going to be quite significant. So Venus and Jupiter having their conjunction there on the 8th, 9th, and 10th of June is kind of the first wave of this, but we'll also have Mercury and Mars and more do this. So this is a big summer that we're ramping up to, and I just know in general that a lot of people right now are saying July, July, July. And that's true, July looks like a big month, but June is not to be underestimated. Case in point, the solar activity that we've already had, the geomagnetic storm that we are currently in right now, the volcanic activity, and the earthquake activity. So that is your update for today. I have been your host, Stefan Burns. Thank you all so much for watching. Please smash that thumbs up button to help the channel grow. Subscribe to stay up to date on everything that's happening here on Earth energetically. Earthquakes, volcanoes, solar activity, space weather, planetary alignments, interstellar and cosmic forces, comets, and more. We cover everything. I release videos almost daily. Thank you all so much for your support. Keep in mind, we also have a sale right now at earthevolution.com/store. This is my website where I sell a variety of holistic wellness products. For example, all organic herbal tea blends, natural muscle balms and bug sprays. We have merchandise, crystals, and more. You can use the code BOOMBOOM for 10% off all the way till the end of Sunday. So thank you all so much for your support there. We'll ship things out to you as soon as possible, available to everyone in the United States. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a great one. Wishing you well, and I'll see you all in the next video.